with this we come to the end of the Colorado series, and in my last lecture we have looked at the sidelines, which is bishop takes knight and the knight takes knight. In this video we are going to look the final move, which is the bishop to d2, and this is one of the main line of the Colorado Gambit. Against this I am going to propose you play knight to e4, and here you can see I have highlighted by the arrows white has 5 good options, and we are going to look each by turn. So the first, the least dangerous option is knight takes c6. Well, against this the very simple reply by the black will be knight takes c3, and you can see it's attacking bishop as well as the queen, and that means the game is almost over. This has happened in one of my game, and after long thinking my opponent decided to play this move, which is knight takes a7, but his idea is probably to play rook to b1 if I capture that bishop with the knight, but I simply diffuse everything with the move c6, and now the 3 pieces are hanging, and in the game white come out with this sequence, which is queen to c1, but after queen takes and rook takes and knight takes bishop and knight takes knight and pawn takes knight, I emerge with a clear piece up. So knight takes c6 is a completely rubbish move. The other move white has tried is bishop takes c6. Well, afterwards black will recapture, and again the knight is hanging, so white has to pretty much take this knight, and here I recommend that black should play a very cunning move, queen takes d4, and now you can see black has a few options which knight is going to take. So the only logical reply from the white here is knight takes c6, which attack the queen, and after queen takes knight with the check, white block the check with the queen. I got this position in just one game. It continues like this, so I played the move queen takes g2, and here my opponent castle on the queen side, and I played queen back to g6. So my idea is very simple. Not only I'm attacking the knight, but also attacking the c2 pawn, so my opponent wisely defended both the things with knight to d4, and here I played the move rook to b1. Now if my opponent take the bishop, I'm more than happy because I'm a pawn up, in fact couple of pawns up, so that won't bother me. So in the game my opponent decided to play rook to b1, but it turns out that it's a big mistake, because now I played the move queen to b6. My threat is very simple. I want to checkmate white on b1, so my opponent come out with a logical reply, which is blocking the file knight to b3, and here I continue with the move queen to c6. So once again creating a checkmate threat, and if my opponent would have to play the move such as knight to d4, which looks a logical move because it's attacking both the piece, but then black has a wonderful reply, which is queen to c5, and white cannot capture the bishop because queen to a3 check is looming, which leads to the checkmate. So that's why in the game after queen to c6 my opponent decided to play the move c3, but again this turns out very weakening move, and I exploit this with a very cunning move itself, the move e6, and here my opponent made the final blunder, which is knight to d4, which looks again attacking the both the piece, but can you spot it? Yep, it's bishop to a3, it's a checkmate. So that is one sample line which give you a highlight how you can play against bishop takes c6. Now the third move I want to consider is rook to b1. Afterwards black response is pretty much forced, so black has to capture this knight, and you can see that knight is attacking both the pieces. So here 2 moves has been tried. In first game my opponent tried rook cross b2, but very simple, after knight takes queen and king takes knight, I played the move bishop back to d7. So I'm protecting that knight, and the game continues like this. So my opponent captured this knight, and after I recapture with the bishop, he decided to play rook to e1. So his idea is very simple, because black is lagging in development, so meanwhile white is activating his major pieces. But here I decided to do a very good pawn sacrifice, and in fact when I check with the engine, that's the best move he has recommended. So here I played the move e6, and after very logical knight takes bishop and pawn takes knight, my opponent grabbed the pawn, and that allowed me to free up my all the pieces. So I played king to d7, and after rook goes back to the d1, I played the move bishop to d6, and you can see not only my rooks are connected now, but these two rooks of the white are not coordinating properly, and that is the feature of this game. So the game continues with the move rook to b7. In a way, white wants to tie up my rooks, but I simply diffuse everything with the move c5, and after bishop to e3, I capture that pawn, and after white recapture, I played the move rook h to b8. And now you can see the drawback of the rook moves. This other rook would like to join this rook, but the king is sitting in between. So forcefully white has to capture this rook, and after I recapture, the amazing thing is I'm giving opportunity for white to capture either of my pawn, but the thing is whether white capture like my a7 pawn or the g7 pawn, the rook will follow that bishop, and on the same time I'll regain the another side pawn. So for example, in the game my opponent decided to grab the g7 pawn, but after very simple rook to g8 attacking the bishop, and bishop drop backs to the d4, I first of all hit the bishop one more time with the move c5, and after bishop to d4 I just capture the pawn. And now it's a reverse, like white has a two hanging pawn. So after long thinking, my opponent come out with this only good move f4, but I simply capture the pawn, and that means that this h pawn is a winner of the game. And in the game my opponent tried some tactics, so he played the move f5, which invited me to capture the bishop, but I wisely avoid everything and I played the move rook to h6, and now white is losing. The game continues with king to d2, but now I capture this bishop, and after rook captures, I first of all consolidate my position with the move king to d6, and after rook to d3 I played the move a6. So I just want to protect all of my pawns, so there is no tactics exist for the white. And after a4 I now played the move rook to f6, and after rook to f3 and h5, you can see not only black is going forward with the h pawn, but king will come to the e5 and f pawn will also drop. So this was one of the nice game in this line, which give you an illustration how you can play for the win. The another try was done by one of my friend who has done some research on this line, and he come out with this move, which is queen check, and after forcefully black has to block this check with the pawn. Now white capture this queen, and his idea is my pawn structures are misplaced, and in a way white has an active position. Well, yes, in some way it's true, but that doesn't mean that black has no chances, and following game will show you how black can continue for the winning position. I capture the queen, and now in the view of black knight is capturing the bishop, I decided to capture the knight. Now I force the pace with the move a6, so my opponent captured my knight, and after I recapture, he finally grabbed the pawn. So knight takes c6, which allow me to free up my all the pieces. So I played rook to g8, so attacking the g2 pawn, and after g3 I played the move bishop to g7. So I give back the pawn, but in return I get all of my pieces active, and that turns out very good for me. So here white obviously castle on the king side, and I played the move king to d7, and here two knight moves has been tried. In the first game my opponent tried knight to b4. After very simple king to d6 and rook to e1, I played the move h4, and not only black will dissolve the double pawn, but black has the two wonderful bishop, and I managed to win the game comfortably. So knight to b4 is not a good move. In another game my opponent tried knight to e5 check, but I just simply capture this knight, and after white recapture, although black has reach the opposite color bishop ending, this position is more favorable to the black. So in the game I decided to play the move c5, and after rook check my king comes to the e6, and after further rook check my king goes to the f7. So now planning is very simple. I want to play the move d4, so my opponent wisely played the move bishop to d2, and I played the move d4 anyways. And here my opponent tried to grab the loose pawn on c5, so he played the move rook to c6. But now I exchanged the rooks, so I played rook g to c8, and after rook captures and rook captures, now my opponent played the move c3. So he just want to isolate my pawn so he can target them, but it's not easy because white rook is not active, so that's why it's very hard for white to generate any sort of counterplay. So here I played the move king to e6, so attacking the loose e5 pawn, and after f4 I played the move rook to b8, and I'm first on getting the open file. And here my opponent captured the pawn, and after I recaptured he played the move rook to d1. Again it was a rapid game, and my opponent was in the time trouble right now, so you can see the last move was not that accurate, and I exploit that with the move bishop to g4, and after rook to c1 I played the move rook to b2. I managed to win the a pawn, and that means black has two passes, and in the game white cannot stop both of them, so I managed to win the game. So that game will give you a highlight that how you can play for win in knight to e5 line.